The already crowded field of Republicans jumping into the 2024 race for president is about to get even bigger. Former Vice President Mike Pence is reportedly planning to jump in the race next week, as is former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. He'll join Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, and a slew of other contenders. In addition, of course, to former President Donald Trump, whose dedicated pace has not been deterred by his two impeachments, culpability in the January 6th attack on the Capitol, efforts to overthrow the 2020 election, and several ongoing criminal and civil lawsuits. CNN's latest polling has Trump leading the field with 53% support, more than double DeSantis, his closest opponent, with 26%. Is a Trump nomination already a foregone conclusion? And what do these numbers say about the state of the Republican Party? I'm joined now by David Gergen, who served as an advisor to presidents from both parties, Nixon, Ford, Reagan, and Clinton, and is now with the Harvard Kennedy School. David, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Gautam. Pleasure to be here. I'm actually looking forward to what you have to say about picking presidents. You're the guy who wrote the book.
Oh, thank you.
Picking presidents.
Thank you, David. I could not have done it without talking to you about it. So let me ask you, what do you make of the current state of the Republican field?
Well, they have no clear front runner, but I do agree with your analysis that Donald Trump is benefiting from the way so many people are jumping in. I mean, it is that poll, the CNN poll, 2-1 for among Republicans for Trump over DeSantis. Where does the people like DeSantis, where do they go? Where do other people like Nikki Haley or Tim Scott, where do they go to pick up votes? They have to peel them away from Trump to some extent. It's hard to see any of these candidates doing that in a massive fashion. So I do think that a field this big gives a heavy weight on the side of Donald Trump becoming the nominee again.
Is there any way for one of his rivals to sort of peel away votes from Trump without alienating them and ensuring that he or she has no chance of the nomination themselves?
There's no way, I think, to take it away from him. But the real hope, of course, if you're running one of those other campaigns, is that Trump goes to jail, or something happens that you can't force it yourself as your candidate, but you want to be there. You want to have your candidate in the field in case something does happen, and something, some way that Trump gets blindsided, or there's something on his health, or whatever it may be. There are a lot of, this isn't by all means, by no means do we have a certain nominee, but I think the winds are blowing in that direction pretty strongly.
So you don't get a win unless you're playing in the game.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And, we thought it was going to, and it's fluid. These races tend to be fluid these days. Who imagined that Jimmy Carter would have been nominated way back when, for example? Nobody gave him any chance for that. Barack Obama, nobody thought he could be the nominee. He came out of nowhere in some fashion. So that can happen here. I think the surprise in the last 2 or 3 weeks is DeSantis has looked so invulnerable, and he was the most effective political leader that we've seen in a big southern state. And he won massively in Florida, but he's been stumbling as he gets into the national and especially the international arena. He's not as well versed on the international side as he is on the domestic, and that comes through. He makes mistakes.
So it's striking. In his campaign announcement, in his recent sort of statements, DeSantis has declared that he wants to pardon the January 6th attackers of the Capitol. And
that's a good example. Yeah. That's a good example of what we're talking about.
It is so. And in his book, David, he also says that his criticism of Donald Trump is that he was not effective enough at using the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the IRS to attack his political enemies.
Yes.
So what does it say about the current state of the Republican Party that 75% of the people who say they'll vote in the Republican primaries are supporting a candidate who thinks they should pardon the January 6th electors and use the organs of the U.S. government to attack their political opposition?
Well, of course, it's self-destructive, and I do think it pays very little heed to the Constitution and to the normal order of things, and I don't think it's necessarily disqualifying, but it comes darn close. And I do think the Republican Party is still in the tailspin. It's not going to get out. The Republican Party increasingly it looks as if the only way they're going to really get back into power is for the Democrats to lose 2 or 3 in a row, for the Republicans to to see the Democrats lose 2 or 3 in a row, and it gives them an opportunity to get into this. But we're really in strange times. We haven't seen anything like this, as you well know, in our lifetime. And it looked to me like this kind of almost nonchalance toward our normal functioning of a democracy that the candidates just don't take it seriously. And as a result of that, we're in a situation where we're in decline around the world. And this debt crisis hasn't been any great godsend for us in terms of our international reputation.
So if you were steering one of the challengers to Trump, the Nikki DeSantis campaign, let's say,
yes.
What advice would you give him or her?
Read the Constitution. That's for starters. And understand what the norms are that surround the Constitution. And then stand up for the institutions of government, of democracy that need more attention, and get away from these cultural issues. They may be fun in a sandbox, but they don't go to the question whether this country is going to survive as a democracy. And we need 1 or 2 people who are just different from what we've been seeing. And can any one of these people do it? Can a Tim Scott come out with his optimism that he's showing? He's someone who could potentially surprise. I think Nikki Haley is a strong candidate to be on the vice presidential side of that ticket. She's a good politician in her own right, and I don't think way down deep doesn't believe in a lot of the nonsense that's going on. So there are people in this fight who could surprise. But I think at the moment, the most important thing is what happens with Trump in between here and November, and what happens to DeSantis. Can DeSantis get his moxie back?
So, I mean, the advice to sort of pay attention to the Constitution. We would hope that
yes.
every candidate does that, and obviously not all of them do. What I would wonder about if I were that candidate is that a path to victory? Even if it might make me a better president, but it might not make me a better presidential candidate.
It may not make you more electable in the beginning, but it leaves you with a better legacy over time. And sometimes if you persevere, you can make a John McCain, for example. There was something honorable about John McCain that we continue to believe in and see in him today. And he was out there in a pretty lonely place for a while, but he took it in stride. He took it with good grace. And we just don't see that candidate out there. We don't see a person like that. I mean, DeSantis is obviously a shrewd politician. He's obviously got a lot of guts. But his views on abortion, which are sort of antediluvian, his views on some of these other things are going to disqualify him in the eyes of most American voters before this is over, unless he can get back to some place. What we want is a president who's effective in carrying out the Constitution, not someone who's effective in squashing it.
So David, you have known more presidents than almost anyone, and so when I look at say Mike Pence, who's about to declare, or who's just declaring now, and his former boss whipped up a mob that chanted "Hang Mike Pence" as they stormed the Capitol.
Yes.
And he essentially has refused to criticize Trump in any but the most oblique terms for that. What seems to me the somewhat dubious privilege of finishing 9th in the Iowa caucuses, which seems like about where he is. So what does that tell us about him and the other people around him that they're making this?
Well, that's a good question. In many ways, I think that Mike Pence is one of the more honorable, if not one of the most honorable people in the race. But this is a time when you can't run for him to run against the person he was president to. That's just not done. You don't go and attack your former boss in the way that he's required to do now, and he's got himself in. I'm surprised he's in the race. I thought Pompeo would be in the race, and Pence wouldn't be in the race. And it's turned out just the opposite.
So, if this is the paradox the Republicans face, that the positions that they're taking to win in the nomination sort of are going to hurt them in the general, and you want to win the general, then it seems like the dynamic that sets up is essentially the debt ceiling, right? That if you were Ron DeSantis, you would want to default in the hope that that would get blamed on Donald Trump, and then you might win the presidency. Is that
Yes.
is that danger part of what's shaping these negotiations right now?
I think that DeSantis would be wise to try to stop out Trumping Trump. You know, he's trying to get himself to the right of Donald Trump, and you know, who would have imagined it? Anybody would take that course. It's exceedingly dangerous, and I think it's exceedingly wrong. But you know, DeSantis has been a surprise in this race. I thought he would be a much stronger candidate than he has turned out to be in the last couple of weeks. As I say, I think the stumbles in the last few weeks have really made him seem more human. But he does have time. He has time to turn this around. And if he can find his groove, especially on the international front, then I think he'll become a much more viable and challenger. Right now, I don't think he can beat Trump.
So if it's not DeSantis, you think Tim Scott? Tim Scott is the person you mentioned. What would you tell him?
Well, I tell Tim Scott, one of the nice things about it, the race, he's running this race, is he's an optimist. And being optimistic about America, you should. Well, it's too easy to write off America's prospects for the future these days. And Scott comes along and says, "Don't write us off. We're better than we're acting, and I'm going to bring some, you know, some lightness as well to it." So I think that Tim Scott is along with Nikki Haley. Those are the two people who are potentially the most interesting in looking for a way back that's not out trumping Trump.
If you had to put your money on it, David, who's going to be the nominee in a few months?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. Well, thank you very much, David Gergen. We really appreciate having you here with us today.
Glad to have you on the air here. And Gautam, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too.